New York City, a stormy night. The city buzzed with lights in motion. But for Ethan Sullivan, heir to a billion-dollar real estate empire, the world felt like a battlefield. Seated in his luxurious penthouse, he stared at the contract his mother, Eleanor Sullivan, had shoved in front of him earlier that morning, a marriage contract arranged with the daughter of a prominent business partner. Ethan crumpled the paper in his clenched fist. Ridiculous, he barked, to no one in particular. To him, it was another blatant attempt by his mother to manipulate his life. But this time, he wouldn't cave. He needed a way out, and fast. As an audacious idea took root in his mind, Ethan grabbed his phone and dialed his trusted attorney and best friend, Liam Carter. Meet me at Delaney at 9. I have a plan. Delaney, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. The room was alive with the elite and the glamorous, but Ethan, with his towering presence and natural charisma, outshone them all. By the time Liam arrived, Ethan already had a glass of whiskey in hand and a glint of mischief in his eyes. You look like you're about to start trouble, Liam said, settling into the plush chair across from him. I'm hiring a wife, Ethan announced, no hesitation in his tone. Liam nearly choked on his water. You're joking, even for you, Ethan? That's insane. Ethan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a serious tone. It's straightforward. I find someone willing to pretend to be my wife for a few months. It blocks this arranged marriage, and my mother gets off my back. Liam stared at him for a moment, then burst into laughter. You're serious, aren't you? Deadpan, Ethan replied. Do I look like I'm joking? Across town, Emily Harper sat in a modest apartment, poring over unpaid bills. Her salary as a private tutor barely covered the essentials. With her mother hospitalized and medical expenses piling up, Emily felt cornered. A message popped up on a private job forum she frequented, and her curiosity was piqued. Seeking an educated woman with proper manners to act as a contracted wife. Pay generous, duration 6 months, discretion required. Her initial reaction was disbelief. Who would post something so outrageous? But as the number of zeros in the pay figure sank in, she hesitated. Her mother's hospital bills flashed through her mind. With a shaky breath, she responded to the ad, unsure if she was stepping into an opportunity or a disaster. 2 days later, in Liam's office, Ethan sifted through profiles Liam had compiled from the applicants, too flashy to demanding. Next, he muttered as he tossed profiles into a growing discard pile. When he reached Emily's profile, something about her photo gave him pause. She had a natural beauty, a quiet dignity that stood out among the polished and artificial smiles. This one set up a meeting, he said, pointing at her photo. The meeting that evening, Ethan waited at a secluded cafe, his sharp suit contrasting with the warm rustic ambience. When Emily walked in, he immediately noticed her. She wasn't dressed to impress, but her grace and confidence commanded attention. Emily, on the other hand, was doing her best to steady her nerves. She'd Googled Ethan Sullivan after receiving the meeting details, and was floored by his reputation, not to mention his wealth. The man who stood before her exuded power, but there was also an arrogance that made her bristle. You understand the terms? Ethan asked, his voice calm but direct. Yes, Emily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. But I need assurances that this arrangement will be safe for me, and I want the payment up front. A corner of Ethan's mouth lifted into a smirk. You're bold. I like that. Emily wasn't sure if she'd just passed a test or fallen into a trap. The two negotiated finer details over coffee, with Ethan laying out his expectations. She would attend high-profile events, play the part of the doting wife, and deal with his overbearing mother. In exchange, she would receive an amount of money that would erase her debts and secure her future. By the end of the night, they signed the contract. It was official. Emily Harper was now on paper Mrs. Ethan Sullivan. Ethan's penthouse. Later that night, alone in his study, Ethan sipped another glass of whiskey and stared at the skyline. This plan, however clever, was risky. His mother was sharp, and the woman he chosen was a wild card, but desperation had left him no choice. Meanwhile, Emily sat in her tiny apartment holding a copy of the signed contract. Her hands trembled as the weight of her decision settled in. What had she gotten herself into? Neither of them realized that this agreement, born out of necessity and defiance, would become something far more complicated and life-changing. Ethan Sullivan's penthouse. 2 days later, the air buzzed with quiet tension as Emily stepped out of the elevator, escorted by the building's concierge. She clutched her bag tightly, her knuckles white, as she took in the grandeur of the place. Polished marble floors, walls adorned with abstract art, and a breathtaking view of the city through Florida ceiling windows. This wasn't her world. Ethan stood near the bar, pouring himself a drink. He turned at the sound of her heels clicking against the floor, his sharp blue eyes scanning her from head to toe. She wore a simple dress, modest but elegant, practical Ethan noted no pretense. "You're late," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. Emily raised an eyebrow, suppressing the urge to retort. "I had to finish a tutoring session before coming. Some of us actually work for a living." Ethan smirked, amused by her bite. "Fair enough. Come, let's talk." He led her to a seating area where Liam was already waiting with a stack of documents. Emily sat stiffly on the edge of a plush couch, acutely aware of how out of place she felt. Liam greeted her warmly, offering a sharp contrast to Ethan's cold demeanor. "These are the final details of the arrangement." Liam began sliding a folder toward Emily. "You'll need to familiarize yourself with Ethan's background, preferences, and public persona. The first event is tomorrow night, a gala hosted by the Sullivan Foundation." Emily opened the folder, her eyes widening as she scanned the information. Ethan's life was a carefully curated spectacle filled with strategic relationships and endless scrutiny. Her role, as outlined in black and white, was to play the perfect wife, poised, supportive, and unshakably loyal. "I assume you'll provide me with the appropriate attire for such events?" she asked, her tone measured. Ethan's lips twitched. "You assumed correctly. I've arranged for a stylist to meet you tomorrow morning." Emily glanced at him, her gaze unwavering. "Good. I'd hate to embarrass you by showing up underrested." Ethan chuckled softly, more to himself than to her. "You're full of surprises, Miss Harper." The Sullivan Foundation gala the following night. The grand ballroom shimmered with opulence, every detail meticulously designed to impress. Ethan stood near the entrance, adjusting the cufflinks on his tailored tuxedo. He was used to being the center of attention, but tonight he felt a flicker of something unusual, anticipation. When Emily arrived, escorted by one of Ethan's drivers, she stepped out of the car wearing a sleek navy gown that hugged her figure without being ostentatious. Her hair was styled elegantly, and the sapphire earrings she wore, borrowed, not owned, glinted under the light. Heads turned as she walked up the marble steps, her composure radiating confidence. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he watched her approach. "You clean up well," he remarked, offering his arm. Emily hesitated for a fraction of a second before taking it. "So do you," she replied, her tone neutral, but her eyes sparkling with subtle defiance. Inside the ballroom, the two navigated a sea of socialites and business magnates. Ethan introduced Emily to key figures with ease, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a gesture that felt both possessive and protective. Emily played her part flawlessly, smiling politely, engaging in small talk, and laughing at just the right moments. But the real test came when Eleanor Sullivan made her entrance. Eleanor Sullivan, the formidable matriarch of the Sullivan family, her presence commanded attention as she strode into the room. Draped in an emerald green gown, her sharp eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Ethan and Emily. With a calculated smile, she approached Ethan. Eleanor began, her voice smooth but laced with authority. "And this must be Emily, your wife." Emily extended a hand, her smile unwavering. "Mrs. Sullivan, it's a pleasure to meet you." Eloise's gaze flicked to Emily's hand before she accepted it briefly. "Likewise. I must say you're not what I expected." "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Emily asked, her tone polite but pointed. Ethan suppressed a grin as Eleanor's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "We'll see," Eleanor replied coolly before turning her attention back to her son. "I hope you realize what's at stake tonight, Ethan. Don't embarrass the family." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. "I never do." As Eleanor moved on to greet other guests, Emily exhaled softly. "She's intense." "That's putting it mildly," Ethan muttered. "She'll be watching you like a hawk. Don't give her a reason to doubt us." Later that night, the gala was a success. Ethan and Emily maintained their facade impeccably, leaving no room for suspicion. But as they rode back to the penthouse in silence, the weight of the night settled over them. "You are good tonight," Ethan said, finally breaking the silence. "Than I expected." Emily glanced at him, her expression unwritable. "Thank you, I think." Ethan smirked. "Don't get too comfortable. This is just the beginning." Emily leaned back in her seat, staring out at the city lights. "Believe me, I'm well aware." As the car pulled up to the penthouse, Ethan felt a strange pang of respect for the woman beside him. She was different, sharp, unyielding, and for the first time in years, he wondered if he might have underestimated someone. The next morning, the Sullivan penthouse. Emily woke up in her designated guest room, the soft morning light streaming through the tall windows. She stretched, her body still tense from the previous night's gala. It had gone better than expected, but Eleanor's piercing gaze lingered in her mind like a shadow. She dressed simply, dark jeans and a crisp blouse, and made her way to the kitchen where Ethan was already seated at the marble counter, sipping his coffee and scrolling through emails on his tablet. He didn't look up when she entered. "Ed, good morning," she said, forcing a cheerful tone. Ethan glanced at her over his cup, his expression unreadable. "You're awake early." "I'm not the type to sleep in," she replied, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She hesitated, then added, "Last night was intense." Ethan chuckled softly. "Welcome to my world. Eleanor is relentless, but you handled her well." Emily smiled faintly. "Thanks. Though I doubt she's convinced." Eth leaned back in his chair, studying her check. "Never be fully convinced. But that's not your problem, it's mine. Just stick to the plan, and we'll get through this." Emily nodded, but something about his words unsettled her. There was an edge to him, a vulnerability he kept hidden behind his arrogance. She wondered how much of Ethan Sullivan was real, and how much was a carefully constructed mask. Eleanor Sullivan wasn't a woman to be easily deceived. After the gala, she'd made a discreet phone call to her assistant, instructing her to dig into Emily Harper's background. Eleanor didn't trust this sudden marriage, and she certainly didn't trust the woman her son had chosen. As she sat in her sunlit study reviewing the initial report, her lips pressed into a thin line. Emily was clean, too clean. No criminal record, no scandals, no connections to anyone in Ethan's world. A quiet, unassuming life, suspiciously unremarkable. "Who are you?" "Emily Harper." Eleanor murmured, her sharp mind already formulating a plan to uncover the truth. Ethan had spent the morning in meetings, leaving Emily to explore the penthouse. She admired the sleek modern design, but found it cold and impersonal, a reflection of its owner. As she wandered into his home office, a framed photograph on the desk caught her eye. It was Ethan as a young boy, standing next to a man who could only be his father. They were on a yacht, laughing carefree. The SHTHK contrast to the serious, guarded man Ethan had come struck her. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear him enter. "What are you doing in here?" Ethan's voice was sharp, startling her. Emily turned quickly, her cheeks flushing. "I wasn't snooping. I just saw the photo." Ethan's gaze flicked to the frame, and his expression softened momentarily before hardening again. "That's none of your concern." "I didn't mean to pry," Emily said, her voice gentle. I can't imagine you ever being that carefree." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That was a long time ago. People change." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Ethan answered Turo, his mood darkening further as he spoke. After ending the call, he turned to Emily, his eyes cold. "We have another event tonight. Be ready by 7. And wear something that will make them talk for the right reasons." Emily wore a shimmering gold gown. Ethan's stylist had chosen her hair swept up in an elegant shan. When she descended the stairs to meet Ethan, his usual composed expression faltered for a split second. "You look," he trailed off, clearing his throat. "Appropriate." Emily smirked. "I'll take that as a compliment." They arrived at the auction to a flurry of flashing cameras and murmured whispers. Emily felt every gaze on her, but she walked beside Ethan with her head held high. Inside, they mingled with the elite, Ethan effortlessly navigating the crowd while Emily played her part flawlessly. But the evening took a turn when Eleanor appeared, accompanied by Vivian Price. The woman Eleanor had originally chosen for Ethan. Vivian was everything. Emily wasn't statuesque, polished, and impossibly poised. She greeted Ethan with an air of familiarity that made Emily's stomach churn. "Ethan," Vivian purred, placing a hand on his arm. "It's been far too long." "Vivian," Ethan replied coolly, stepping back slightly. "This is my wife, Emily." Vivian's eyes flicked to Emily, her smile barely concealing her disdain. "Charmed," she said, her tone dripping with insincerity. "Ethan never mentioned you." Emily forced to smile. "That's probably because we've been too busy enjoying our time together." Vivian raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "How lovely." "Ethan, you must excuse me. I simply must catch up with you later." As Vivian walked away, Emily turned to Ethan, her voice low. "She's charming." Ethan sighed. "Ignore her. Vivian's just another pawn in my mother game." Emily hesitated. "Doesn't it bother you having to constantly navigate these games?" Ethan glanced at her, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. "You get used to it." Later that night, back at the penthouse, the tension between them simmered. As they entered the penthouse, Emily kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch, rubbing her temples. "Your mother and Vivian make quite the team." Ethan poured himself a drink, his movements precise and controlled. "Don't let them get to you. This is temporary." Emily looked up at him, her frustration bubbling over. "Maybe for you, but for me it's 6 months of being judged, scrutinized, and constantly reminded that I don't belong in your world." Ethan set his glass down, his expression softening. "Emily, you belong here more than half the people we met tonight. Don't let them make you feel otherwise." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment the walls between them seemed to crack. But before she could respond, Ethan turned away, retreating to his room. Emily sat in silence, staring at the city lights. She had agreed to this arrangement for the money, but as the days passed, she realized it was much more than a transaction, and that terrified her. The next morning, Ethan's office. Ethan was already immersed in a sea of spreadsheets and contracts when Emily knocked lightly on the door frame. He looked up, his piercing blue eyes narrowing slightly. "You don't have to knock," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This is your home now, remember?" Emily stepped in, her posture tentative. "It doesn't feel like home," she admitted softly, letting her gaze drift to the skyline visible through the massive windows. "It feels like a stage." Ethan's lips twitched, almost forming a smirk. "That's exactly what it is. And you're the star performer." Emily crossed her arms, bristling at his dismissive tone. "Maybe you should consider that I didn't grow up with this kid. Some of us have to learn as we go." Ethan regarded her for a moment, then stood, his tall frame imposing, but not threatening. "You did fine last night," he said, his voice softer. "Now better than I expected." "High praise," Emily muttered, rolling her eyes. A rare chuckle escaped him. "It's a start. Now we have a fundraiser dinner tonight. This one's smaller, more intimate. No cameras, just you, me, and a few key players." Emily raised an eyebrow. "So no pressure then?" "Exactly," Ethan said, handing her a neatly printed agenda. "You're catching on later." That evening, the Sullivan family's private retreat. The dinner was held in a sprawling estate just outside the city. Unlike the gala's grandeur, this event had an air of exclusivity. The dining room was set for only 10 people, the table adorned with understated yet expensive decor. Emily felt the weight of the eyes on her as they entered, Ethan's hand lightly resting on her back. Among the guests were influential board members of Sullivan Enterprises and, of course, Eleanor Sullivan, whose gaze was as sharp as ever as they took their seats. Eleanor leaned forward, her tone deceptively warm. "Emily, dear, you must tell us, how did you and Ethan meet?" Emily froze for half a beat, her mind racing. The story they'd rehearsed was simple enough, but the way Eleanor was looking at her made her second-guess every detail. Ethan stepped in smoothly, his voice calm and steady. "She was tutoring one of my business partners' children," Ethan said. "We met at an event. I was immediately drawn to her intelligence and authenticity." The room hummed with polite murmurs of approval, but Eleanor's expression remained unreadable. "How charming," she said, though her tone dripped with skepticism. "And what do you think of our world?" "Emily, surely it's quite a change from your usual surroundings." Emily forced a smile. "It's different, yes, but I think there's beauty in every world, don't you?" Eleanor tilted her head, her smile razor-sharp indeed. As the evening progressed, the questions became more probing. Vivian was also in attendance, seated directly across from Emily. Her presence was like a storm cloud, radiating subtle hostility. During dessert, she seized her moment. "Emily," Vivian began, her voice sweet but edged, "it must be overwhelming stepping into such a high-profile role. Tell me, how do you handle the scrutiny?" Emily met her gaze, refusing to flinch. "I focus on what's important. As long as Ethan and I are on the same page, the rest is just noise." Vivian's smile faltered, but before she could retort, Ethan spoke up, his tone cool and commanding. "Emily has adapted remarkably well. I couldn't ask for a better partner." The table fell silent, and Emily glanced at Ethan, surprised by the conviction in his voice. For a moment it felt like he wasn't just playing a role. Later, on the drive back to the penthouse, the silence in the car was heavy, the events of the night replaying in Emily's mind. She finally broke the quiet. "Do you ever get tired of it?" Ethan didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "Tired of what? This constant performance," she said. "Always saying the right thing, playing the right part." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not about wanting to do it, it's about needing to. People like my mother, my competitors, they're always watching, waiting for a mistake. If you let them see a crack, they'll tear you apart." Emily studied him, her irritation fading into something closer to understanding. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. For a moment they sat and shared silence, the city lights flashing by. It was the first time Ethan seemed truly human to her, not just the arrogant billionaire she'd agreed to marry. Back at the penthouse, the air between them shifted as Emily poured herself a glass of water in the kitchen. Ian appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. He hesitated, as if debating whether to say something, then leaned against the counter. "You handled tonight well," he said, "even with Vivian and my mother throwing curveballs." Emily shrugged, her lips curving into a small smile. "I've dealt with worse. Tids can be surprisingly ruthless." Ethan laughed softly, the sound genuine. "I'll take your word for it." There was a moment of quiet between them, comfortable this time, and looked at him, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Do you ever wonder what your life would be like if you didn't have all this money, power, expectations?" Ethan's smile faded slightly. "All the time." But it's not about what I want, it's about what's expected of me. Emily nodded, her heart aching unexpectedly for him. Maybe it's time to stop living for everyone else. Ethan's gaze lingered on her, something unreadable in his eyes. Maybe the penthouse. Early morning. Emily woke to the distant hum of the city below. She had hoped the morning would bring some sense of calm, but the weight of the previous night lingered. She replayed the sharp exchanges with Eleanor and Vivian, the calculating gazes of the guests. Her life had become a chessboard, and she was a piece in Ethan's game. She found him in the living room, his tie undone and a cup of coffee in hand. As he stared out at the skyline, he looked different in the morning light, less the polished billionaire and more real. "You're up early," she said softly, her voice breaking the silence. Ethan glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Habit. You couldn't sleep," she admitted, sitting on the couch. "Last night was a lot." He chuckled dry. "Welcome to the Sullivan world." Emily hesitated, then asked, "Was Vivian ever not important?" Ethan cut her off, his tone sharp. "She's my mother's idea of the perfect match, that's all." Emily nodded, sensing the topic was closed, but a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes stayed with her. Eleanor paced her study, her manicured nails tapping against a folder. Her investigation into Emily had turned up nothing scandalous, but Eleanor wasn't satisfied. She was convinced that no woman without ulterior motives would marry her son so suddenly. "Have her followed," she instructed her assistant. "I want every detail of her life before Ethan." "Yes, ma'am," the assistant replied, leaving the room. Eleanor's eyes narrowed as she stared out the window. "Let's see how long this facade lasts." My dear, Ethan had a meeting, leaving her with some rare free time. She decided to explore the city, needing a break from the gilded cage she now called home. She wandered through Central Park, breathing in the crisp autumn air. As she sat on a bench lost in thought, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Emily Harper," a female voice said, sharp and cold. "This is Eleanor Sullivan." Emily's stomach tightened. "Mrs. Sullivan, how did you get my number?" Eleanor ignored the question. "I thought we should have a proper conversation, just the two of us. Meet me at the 4 at 3 p.m. Don't be late." Before Emily could respond, the line went dead. Emily arrived at exactly 3:00 p.m. Her nerves taut as she stepped inside. Eleanor was already seated, her posture regal and her expression unreadable. "Emily," she said, motioning for her to sit. "Punctual. I like that." Emily took seat, keeping her composure. "You wanted to talk?" Eleanor studied her, her piercing gaze unrelenting. "Let's not waste time. I don't believe for a second that this marriage is real." Emily's heart raced, but she kept her face neutral. "I'm sorry you feel that way." Eleanor leaned forward, her voice low but sharp. "You don't belong in this world, and you know it. Whatever your end game is, I'll find out." Emily met her gaze, refusing to back down. "With all due respect," hit Mrs. Sullivan, "your son chose me. If you have an issue with that, you should take it up with him." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "You're bold, I'll give you that, but boldness doesn't guarantee survival in this family." The tension between them was palpable. Emily stood, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Thank you for the coffee, Mrs. Sullivan. If you'll excuse me, I have somewhere else to be." Eleanor watched her leave, a flicker of something like respect crossing her face before it hardened again. Emily was still fuming when Ethan walked in, his tie loosened and his expression weary. He stopped when he saw her pacing the living room. "What happened?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "Your mother," Emily said, spinning to face him. "She called me, demanded I meet her." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What did she say?" Emily hesitated. "She doesn't believe us." "Check digging into my past." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, muttering a curse under his breath. "I'll handle her." Emily crossed her arms. "Why does she hate me so much?" Ethan looked at her, his expression softening. "She doesn't hate you. She hates that she can't control me anymore." Emily's breath hitched at the honesty in his voice. "That must be exhausting." Ethan gave a dry laugh. "You have no idea." For a moment they stood in silence, the weight of their shared predicament settling over them. Then Ethan stepped closer, his voice softer. "Now you were brave to stand up to her. Not many people do." Emily shrugged, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. "She doesn't scare me." Ethan smirked, his gaze lingering on her. "Maybe you're stronger than I thought." 2 days later, Sullivan Enterprises headquarters. Ethan stood in his corner office, the Manhattan skyline sprawling behind him. He was finishing a call with a board member when his assistant Grace stepped in. "Mr. Sullivan," she began, her tone hesitant, "your mother called. She wants to remind you about the family dinner tonight." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Of course she does. Anything else?" Grace hesitated. "She specifically requested that you bring Emily." Ethan sighed, his frustration simmering beneath his composed exterior. "Tell her we'll be there that evening at the Sullivan estate." Emily felt her nerves mounting as the car approached the sprawling estate. She wore a soft emerald green dress that Ethan's stylist had chosen for her, its elegant simplicity drawing attention to her natural beauty. Ethan sat beside her, impeccably dressed as always, but unusually quiet. "What's on your mind?" she asked, breaking the silence. He glanced at her, his expression guarded. "Family dinners with my mother are always strategic." "Strategic," Emily repeated, raising an eyebrow. "She uses them to test everyone. Tonight you'll be the target." Emily straightened, her determination hardening. "Let her. I can handle it." Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. "I don't doubt that." Inside the estate the atmosphere was charged. The dining room was an opulent masterpiece, with a crystal chandelier casting a warm glow over the long table. Eleanor sat at the head, her posture regal, and her gaze sharp. Beside her was Vivian, who greeted Ethan with an overly familiar smile. Emily was seated directly across from Vivian, an arrangement that felt more like a deliberate move than a coincidence. The other guests included key figures from Sullivan Enterprises and a couple of influential family friends, all of whom seemed eager to observe the new Mrs. Sullivan. As the dinner progressed, Eleanor steered the conversation toward Emily. "Emily, dear," she began, her tone deceptively kind, "tell us, how do you find time to support Ethan's demanding schedule while adjusting to this new lifestyle?" Emily smiled politely, sensing the trap. "It's an adjustment, of course, but Ethan and I make a good team. We balance each other." "How charming," Vivian interjected, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Ethan has always been a perfectionist, I imagine. That must be intimidating." Emily met Vivian's gaze head on, her smile unwavering. "Not at all. I see it as a challenge." "A good one." Ellen's lips tightened ever so slightly while Ethan's gaze flicked between the two women, a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. The turning point of the evening came during dessert. Eleanor raised her glass, a faint smile playing on her lips. "To family," she said, her tone carrying an edge. "May we always uphold the Sullivan name with dignity and strength." Everyone raised their glasses, but Emily noticed the way Eleanor's eyes lingered on her. She braced herself as Eleanor set down her glass and addressed her directly. "Eleanor began, "I must admit, I was surprised when Ethan introduced us. Hugh's always been so particular. What do you think it was that drew him to you?" The room fell silent, all eyes on Emily. She could feel Ethan tense beside her, but she didn't falter. "Well," Emily began, her voice steady, "I suppose you'd have to ask Ethan that, but if I had to guess, I'd say he appreciates authenticity in a world full of pretense. I think that's rare." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Indeed." Vivian leaned forward, her voice silky. "And yet authenticity can be so subjective." Ethan's voice cut through the tension, sharp and commanding. "That's enough." All eyes turned to him as he leaned back in his chair, his gaze icy. "Emily doesn't need to justify herself to anyone, least of all here." The room fell into an awkward silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware. Emily glanced at Ethan, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes, but he didn't look at her. On the drive back, the tension between them simmered. Emily stared out the window, the city lights blurring past. She finally turned to Ethan. "Why did you defend me back there?" Ethan sighed, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. "Because they were out of line." Emily frowned. "You could have ignored it. That's what you usually do." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I didn't want to." Emily studied him, her frustration giving way to curiosity. "What's really going on?" "Ethan, you act like this is all a game, but sometimes it feels like more." Ethan didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "I don't know." Emily blinked, startled by his honesty. "You don't know?" Ethan glanced at her, his ran unreadable. "This was supposed to be simple, but you make it complicated." Emily's heart raced, but she didn't press him further. Instead, they rode the rest of the way in silence, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Later that night in the penthouse, Emily stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the city. She heard Ethan's footsteps behind her, but didn't turn. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice unusually gentle. She nodded. "I'm fine, just tired." Ethan stepped closer, the tension from the car ride still lingering. "You handled yourself well tonight." Emily turned to him, her eyes searching his. "Do you mean that?" "Yes," he said firmly. "You're stronger than they'll ever give you credit for." Emily's breath hitched at the sincerity in his voice. For a moment they stood there, the city lights casting a soft glow around them. Then Ethan stepped back, retreating to his room. As Emily watched him go, she felt her resolve waver. What had started as a cold, calculated arrangement was becoming something else entirely, and that terrified her. The Sullivan penthouse. Early morning. Emily sat at the kitchen island, a cup of tea warming her hands. As she stared at the sunrise, the events of the previous night still echoed in her mind. Eleanor's thinly veiled disdain, Vivian's Pointed remarks and Ethan's surprising defense. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, though she wasn't sure what it meant. The song's soft sound of footsteps drew her attention. Ethan entered the kitchen, his hair slightly disheveled, a rare sign of imperfection. He poured himself a cup of coffee before glancing at her. "You're up early," he said, breaking the silence. Emily shrugged. "Couldn't sleep." Ethan leaned against the counter, studying her. "You handled yourself well last night." "You've said that already," Emily replied, her tone guarded. "But I'm starting to wonder if this is all just part of the AHCHT. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Emily set her cup down, meeting his gaze. "I mean, what happens when this is over, when the 6 months are up, and we go back to our separate lives?" What was all of this for? Ethan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked away, his jaw tightening. "We'll cross that bridge when we get to it." Emily felt a pang of frustration. "You can't just avoid the question forever, Ethan. And you can't expect answers." "I don't have," he shot back, his voice sharper than intended. The tension between them hung heavy in the air. But before either of them could say more, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "I have to go," he said curtly, grabbing his jacket and heading for the door. Eleanor paced her study, her sharp heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Her assistant stood nearby, clutching a folder. "Well," Eleanor demanded, her tone icy. The assistant hesitated before handing her the folder. "We found something, but it's not much." Eleanor opened the folder, her eyes scanning the contents. Emily's background was clean. No criminal record, no scandals, nothing that could be used against her. But one detail caught Eleanor's attention. Her mother. Eleanor murmured, a sly smile forming. "She's in a private care facility. That must be expensive." The assistant nodded. "It seems Emily has been struggling financially to cover the costs." Eleanor's smile widened. "Of course, everyone has a price. Let's see how loyal Emily Harper really is." Ethan stared at the stack of papers on his desk, but his mind was elsewhere. He replayed his argument with Emily that morning, her words cutting deeper than he cared to admit. She wasn't wrong to ask what would happen when their arrangement ended. The problem was he didn't have an answer. His thoughts were interrupted by Liam, who entered without knocking. "You look like hell," Liam said, dropping into the chair across from him. "Thanks," Ethan muttered, rubbing his temples. "What do you want?" "I came to warn you," Liam said, his tone serious. "Now your mother's digging into Emily's life. She's not going to stop until she finds something she can." Ethan's jaw clenched. "I'll handle it." "You'd better," Liam replied, "because if Eleanor finds a crack, she'll exploit it." Emily was reading on the couch when Ethan walked in. His expression was tense, his eyes slightly loosened. He poured himself a drink and sat down across from her. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm but firm. Emily closed her book, her heart racing. "About what?" "My mother," Ethan began, leaning forward. "She's looking for a way to discredit you. She thinks this marriage is a sham." Emily's stomach twisted. "And she's right, isn't she?" Ethan sighed. "That doesn't mean I'm going to let her destroy you. I need you to be prepared for whatever she might throw at you." Emily frowned. "Why are you telling me this now? Shouldn't you have warned me before?" "Because I didn't think she'd stoop this low," Ethan admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But she will. And I need you to trust me." Emily studied him, her emotions a whirlwind. "Trust isn't exactly easy in this situation, Ethan." "I know," he said, his voice softening. "But I meant what I said last night. You're stronger than they give you credit for. Don't let them win." Emily sat by the window, her thoughts racing. She had entered this arrangement out of desperation, but it was becoming something far more complicated. Ethan was no longer just the arrogant billionaire she'd signed a contract with. He was more. And that terrified her. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a text from an unknown number. "You don't belong in his world. Walk away before you're destroyed." A friend. Emily's blood ran cold. She stared at the message, her heart pounding. Whoever sent it knew the truth. But was it a warning or a threat? The anonymous text from the night before felt like a noose tightening around her neck. Her instincts told her it was Eleanor's doing, but she had no proof. Ethan entered, freshly showered and wearing a crisp suit, exuding his usual commanding presence. "You look worried," he said, pouring himself a coffee. Emily hesitated, then slid her phone across the counter to him. "I got this last night." Ethan's face darkened as he read the message. "Who sent this?" "No idea," Emily replied. "Lied. But I have a feeling it's related to your mother." Ethan clenched his jaw, his grip tightening around the phone. "I told you she'd play dirty. But this," he exhaled sharply, "she's gone too far." Emily folded her arms, her voice sharp. "This isn't just a game for me, Ethan. My life is at stake here." Ethan set the phone down, his gaze Steady, I'll fix this. And how exactly are you going to do that? Emily challenged, her frustration boiling over. You can't control everything, Ethan. No, but I can protect you, he said, his voice firm. You're under my roof, and this is my fight. Emily shook her head, her emotions a tangled mess. It doesn't feel like it's just your fight anymore. Ethan didn't respond, his silence speaking volumes. Eleanor was sitting in her meticulously curated garden sipping tea. When Ethan arrived unannounced, he strode toward her, his movements sharp and purposeful. Ethan, Eleanor greeted her, tone cool but curious. To what do I owe this visit? Ethan didn't bother with pleasantries. You sent Emily a message last night. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, her expression feigning innocence. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Ethan snapped, his voice like a whip. You've been digging into her past, trying to scare her off. It ends now. Eleanor set her tea up down with deliberate care. I'm protecting you, Ethan. That woman is not who she seems, and you are. Ethan shot back. Stop meddling, mother. Emily is my wife, and you will respect her. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, her veneer of civility cracking. You don't love her, Ethan. This is a farce, and you know it. Ethan leaned in, his voice low and dangerous. Maybe it started that way, but things change. Emily stays whether you like it or not. Eleanor's expression darkened, but she didn't argue. For the first time, she saw a side of her son she couldn't manipulate, and it both infuriated and frightened her. She stopped when Ethan walked in, his tea eyes slightly loosened and his expression stormy. What happened? She asked. I spoke to my mother, Ethan said, pouring himself a drink. She won't bother you again. Emily frowned. And you think she'll just listen to you? She doesn't have a choice, Ethan replied, his tone clipped. I made it clear. If she crosses you, she crosses me. Emily's heart raced at the weight of his words. Why are you doing this? Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady. Because I care about you. The room fell silent, the air between them thick with unspoken emotions. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Ethan stepped closer, his voice softening. This was supposed to be simple, he admitted, his eyes searching hers. But you're not what I expected, Emily. You're more. Emily's breath hitched, her resolve wavering. Ethan, before she could finish, his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Ethan sighed, pulling it from his pocket. I have to take this, he said, his voice laced with regret. Emily nodded, watching as he stepped into his office. She sank onto the couch, her emotions swirling. This arrangement was supposed to be transactional, but it was becoming something else entirely, something neither of them seemed ready to face. Ethan opened it to find Liam, his face grim. We have a problem. Ethan gestured for him to come in, his posture tense. What now? Liam handed him a tablet, the screen displaying a headline from a gossip website. Ethan Sullivan's wife, the truth behind Emily Harper's past. Emily's stomach dropped as she read the article over Ethan's shoulder. It detailed her mother's illness, her financial struggles, and even speculated that her marriage to Ethan was a calculated move to secure her future. This is my mother's doing, Ethan growled, his fury barely contained. Emily's voice was shaky. How can they print this? They don't even know me. Ethan turned to her, his eyes blazing. I'll handle this. No, Emily said, her voice firm despite her trembling hands. I need to do this. If I stay silent, they'll think it's true. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. We'll do it together. The next morning, Ethan and Emily appeared on a morning talk show. The hosts greeted them warmly, but the tension was palpable. Emily sat beside Ethan, her back straight and her chin held high. We've seen a lot of speculation about your relationship, one host began delicately. What would you like to say to the critics? Emily glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. She took a deep breath before speaking. Our relationship may not look traditional to some, she said, her voice steady, but that doesn't make it any less real. I love Ethan, and I married him because I believe in us. Ethan's hand found hers, his grip reassuring. Emily has brought something into my life that money can't buy: authenticity. I won't let anyone tear us apart. The sincerity in their voices left the hosts momentarily speechless. As the segment ended, the audience applauded, and Emily felt a flicker of hope. Emily sat on the couch, her hands still trembling slightly. Do you think it worked? Ethan sat beside her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. It doesn't matter what they think. What matters is you. As Emily met his gaze, her heart pounding. Ethan, he leaned in, cutting her off with a kiss that was both tender and intense. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers, his voice barely a whisper. This isn't just an arrangement anymore, Emily. Emily closed her eyes, her heart soaring. No, it's not. Emily woke up to the faint sound of rain pattering against the massive windows. Her mind replayed the kiss from the previous night, the emotions still raw and overwhelming. She hadn't expected Ethan to open up, much less to make her heart race the way it did. She got out of bed, her steps tentative. As she walked into the kitchen, Ethan was already there, dressed casually for the first time since she'd met him. He glanced up from his coffee, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Morning," he said, his voice softer than usual. Emily hesitated, then returned the smile. "Morning." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Ethan gestured toward the seat across from him. "We should talk." Emily nodded. "Sitting down about last night?" Ethan leaned forward, his gaze steady. "I meant what I said, Emily. This isn't just an arrangement for me anymore. You're not just a part of some plan to keep my mother off my back." Emily's heart pounded as she searched his face. "Ethan, this was supposed to be temporary, a business deal." "I know," Ethan said, his tone serious, but somewhere along the way it stopped feeling like that. Emily looked away, her thoughts a whirlwind. "I don't know how to do this, Ethan. I wasn't prepared for us." Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Neither was I, but I want to fight it anymore." Eleanor sat in her study, the morning papers spread out before her. The headlines were surprisingly favorable to Ethan and Emily. After their public appearance, Sullivan couple stands united, read one another, declared Ethan and Emily a love story against the odds. She clenched her jaw, her frustration mounting. Her plan to expose Emily had backfired spectacularly worse. It had seemingly brought Ethan and Emily closer together. Her assistant entered cautiously. "Mrs. Sullivan, your son is here." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Send him in." Ethan strode into the room, his presence commanding. As always, he didn't waste time on pleasantries. "It's over, Mother. Whatever you're planning, it ends now." Eleanor stood, her composure slipping. "I was protecting you, Ethan. That woman is my wife." Ethan interrupted, his voice cold and unyielding. "And I won't let you or anyone else come between us." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Do you love her?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Yes." For the first time, Eleanor faltered, a flicker of something like regret crossing her face. "But it was gone as quickly as it appeared." "Then you'd better hope she's as strong as you think she is." Ethan turned to leave, his voice cutting through the silence. "She's stronger than you'll ever know." Despite the whirlwind of emotions in her personal life, Emily found solace in her work. She sat with a young boy named Lucas, guiding him through a tricky math problem. He was bright, but his confidence wavered often. "You're overthinking it," Emily said gently, pointing to the equation. "What's the first step?" Lucas hesitated, then nodded. "Simplify." "Exactly," Emily encouraged, her smile warm. "See, you already know what to do." As Lucas worked through the problem, Emily's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen to see Ethan's name. She hesitated, her heart fluttering before stepping away to answer. "Hey," she said softly. "I was just thinking about you." Ethan said, his voice carrying a warmth that made her cheeks flush. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Better than okay," Ethan replied. I wanted to hear your voice." Emily smiled, her chest tightening with emotions she couldn't ignore. "You're turning into a softie, Mr. Sullivan." Ethan chuckled. "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation." Ethan and Emily arrived arm in arm, their chemistry undeniable. The event was smaller than the previous gala, but the room was filled with influential figures. Emily noticed the way people looked at them now, less with skepticism and more with intrigue as they mingled. Ethan never let her stray too far, his hand resting lightly on her back. It was a subtle gesture, but it made Emily feel safe in a way she hadn't expected. Midway through the evening, Vivian approached, her expression unreadable. "Emily," she said smoothly, "you look stunning tonight." "Thank you," Emily replied, her tone polite but guarded. Vivian's gaze shifted to Ethan. "I must say, this transformation is impressive. I didn't think anyone could tame you." Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Emily didn't tame me, Vivian. She made me want to be better." Vivian's expression tightened, but she recovered quickly. "How touching." "Well, enjoy the evening." As Vivian walked away, Emily turned to Ethan, her brow raised. "That was intense." Ethan shrugged, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Check. Not worth your energy." Emily stood alone, the cool night air brushing against her skin. She heard Ethan's footsteps behind her, but didn't turn. "You disappeared," he said, his voice soft. "I needed some air." Emily replied, "Tonight was a lot." Ethan stepped closer, his presence grounding her. "I know it's overwhelming, but you handled yourself perfectly." Emily turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "Why me?" "Ethan, out of all the people you could have chosen for this, why me?" Ethan hesitated, then reached for her hand. "Because you're real, Emily. You're not impressed by all of this, my money, my power. You see me, not the persona I show the world." Emily's breath caught as he cued her face, his touch gentle. "And now I can't imagine my life without you." Before she could respond, Ethan kissed her this time. It wasn't a kiss of hesitation or uncertainty. It was a kiss of promise, of something deeper than either of them had anticipated. When they finally pulled apart, Emily rested her forehead against his, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm scared, Ethan." "So am I," he admitted, but for the first time. "I don't want to run from it." Emily smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Then let's see where this takes us." Emily awoke to the soft golden light spilling across the room. She stretched, glancing at the empty space beside her. Ethan had left early for work again, his presence lingering in the stillness. Despite the whirlwind of emotions she'd been navigating, she felt an unexpected calm, like something had shifted within her. She walked to the kitchen, where she found a note from Ethan left on the counter. "I'll be home late tonight. I'll make it up to you." A smile tugged at her lips. Ethan had never been particularly sentimental, but the note made her feel something, a connection she hadn't fully understood until now. As she made herself a cup of tea, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Liam. "We need to talk, urgent. Meet Mimi at the office at 2. Emily's stomach twisted. She didn't have a good feeling about this. Emily arrived at the building, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floors. As she made her way to Ethan's office, Liam was waiting outside, his expression serious. "Liam, what's going on?" Emily asked, her heart pounding. Liam hesitated for a moment, glancing toward Ethan's office before speaking in a lowered voice. "There's something you need to know, something I didn't want to tell you." Emily's pulse quickened. "What is it?" he exhaled, looking conflicted. "Eleanor Sheck not going to stop. She's been digging into your past. But it's worse than we thought. She's not just trying to discredit you. She's found something that could ruin everything." Emily's breath hitched, the room spinning around her. "What is it? What did she find?" Liam took a deep breath. "A private investigator has been tracking you. They found out about your mother's illness, about the debts you've been hiding." Emily's eyes widened, panic rising in her chest. That's not public." "How could she?" "I don't know, but she's planning to us it. She's going to make it public, turn it into a scandal." Liam's voice was low, almost a whisper. "She wants to break you, Emily, and she'll us anything she can to do it." Emily felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She had spent so long hiding the truth about her mother's condition, protecting her from the judgment that came with it. The thought that it could all be exposed, the guilt, the shame, was almost too much to bear. "I don't know what to do," Emily whispered, her hands trembling. Liam placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression sympathetic. "You have to tell Ethan. He's not going to let her win, but he needs to know the whole truth." Ethan arrived home late as promised, but the moment he walked through the door, he could feel the tension in the air. Emily was standing near the window, her back to him, her arms crossed as she stared out at the city lights. "Emily," he called, his voice gentle. She turned, her face pale, her eyes filled with worry. "We need to talk." Ethan's heart sank. "What's wrong?" "I know what your mother's planning," she said, her voice breaking. "She's been using a private investigator to dig into my life. She found out about my mom's illness and the debt we're drowning in. She's going to use it against me and against you." Ethan's expression hardened. "She's gone too far. You don't need to worry about her anymore." But Emily shook her head. "Ethan, I've been hiding this my entire life. I never wanted anyone to know. I didn't want you to know." Ethan's eyes softened, and he stepped toward her. "You don't have to hide from me, not anymore." "But," Emily started, her voice trembling. He reached out, taking her hands in his. "We're in this together, Emily, and I don't care about your past. I care about you, all of you." Tears welled in Emily's eyes, and she let out a shaky breath. "I'm so scared. I don't want to ruin everything we've built." Ethan cued her face, his touch warm and steady. "You won't. We'll face this together. My mother can't break us." The situation was more complicated than they had hoped, but as the team laid out their options, Emily felt a sense of relief. She hadn't expected there was a way to fight back, to protect herself and Ethan from Eleanor's schemes. Ethan's hand found hers beneath the table, his grip strong and unknown. "We'll stop her, Emily," Ethan said, his voice resolute. "No one will tear us apart." She squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. "Thank you," she whispered, the weight of everything they had faced lifting just a little as Ethan and Emily relaxed on the couch. The tension of the day finally began to ease. Ethan had taken charge, arranging for their legal team to handle the situation with Eleanor. But for now they had each other. Ian pulled Emily close, wrapping his arm around her. She rested her head on his chest, feeling safe in his embrace. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Emily asked quietly, her voice soft and uncertain. Ethan ran his fingers through her hair, his voice low and thoughtful. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure." "What's that?" Emily asked, lifting her head to look at him. He looked into her eyes, his gaze full of sincerity. I want you in my life, Emily, for as long as you'll have me. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she gazed at him, her heart overflowing with emotions she couldn't put into words. She had never imagined this kind of love, this deep, unwavering connection. I want that too, she whispered. Ethan leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a kiss that was soft, tender, and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Emily rested against him again, feeling a peace she had longed for her entire life. The storm wasn't over. Eleanor still had her cards to play, and the world would continue to test them. But in that moment, with Ethan holding her close, Emily knew they would face whatever came their way together. Eleanor sat in her dimly lit study, the weight of the day's events pressing heavily on her. Ethan's visit had left her shaken, his words cutting deeper than she cared to admit. For the first time, she had seen a side of her son that was untouchable, a side that didn't need her approval or her control. She poured herself a glass of wine, staring into the flickering flames of the fireplace. Her assistant entered cautiously, holding a folder. Mrs. Sullivan, the private investigator, has more findings. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. It's too late for that. Hughes made his choice. The assistant hesitated. There's one detail I thought you might want to see. It's about Emily's mother. Eleanor's hand froze midair, the glass hovering near her lips. What detail? She was treated at a hospital that coincidentally received a donation from Sullivan Enterprises shortly before her admittance, the assistant explained, placing the folder on the desk. It seems Ethan ensured she had the best care available. Eleanor's lips tightened, her mind racing. Her son's involvement was deeper than she'd realized. Emily woke to the smell of fresh coffee wafting through the air. She found Ethan in the kitchen, dressed casually in a button-down shirt and slacks, a rare sight that made her smile. He turned when he saw her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Morning, he said, handing her a mug. Morning, she replied, taking the mug gratefully. This is new. You don't usually make coffee. Ethan leaned against the counter, his expression softening. I figured you could us a little piece this morning. Emily's smile faded slightly as the weight of their situation crept back into her mind. Thank you, I needed this. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze set. We'll get through this, Emily, together. Her chest tightened at the sincerity in his voice. I know it's just hard. I won't let anyone hurt you, Ethan said firmly. Not my mother, not anyone. Emily nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude and something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. Ethan had called a meeting with his legal team and PR advisors. Emily sat beside him, her nerves taut, as they discussed strategies to counter Eleanor's potential move. The atmosphere was tense, but Ethan's commanding presence kept everyone focused. Halfway through the meeting, Liam entered, his face pale. He handed Ethan a slip of paper. Ethan read it, his expression darkening. What is it? Emily whispered. Ethan hesitated before answering. My mother's planning to go public with her findings tonight. She's scheduled an exclusive interview with a high-profile journalist. Emily's stomach dropped. What do we do? Ethan turned to his team, his voice sharp. We go public first. Arrange a press conference. I want it live streamed. Within the hour, the room erupted into action. But Emily felt the walls closing in. Ethan reached for her hand under the table, his grip reassuring. You've got this, he said softly. We've got this. The room was packed with reporters and cameras, their lenses trained on Ethan and Emily as they sat at the head of the table. Ethan spoke first, his voice calm and commanding. There have been rumors and speculation about my wife Emily and her past. Let me set the record straight, he began, his gaze sweeping the room. Emily has faced challenges that would break most people. She's fought harder than anyone I know that, and I admire her strength more than I can put into words. Emily felt tears pricking her eyes as Ethan continued. Yes, her mother has been ill. Yes, there have been financial struggles, but none of that defines who Emily is. She's the most genuine, resilient, and compassionate person I've ever met, and I'm proud to call her my wife. The room was silent, the reporters scribbling furiously. Emily took a deep breath, then leaned into the microphone. This marriage started under unusual circumstances, she admitted, her voice steady despite the nerves coursing through her. But it's become something real, something I never expected. I love Ethan, not because of his name or his wealth, but because of the man he is. The audience murmured, the honesty of her words cutting through the tension. Ethan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. Emily stood on the balcony, the cool breeze brushing against her skin. She stared out at the city, the weight of the day pressing heavily on her. Ethan joined her, his presence grounding her. As always, you were incredible today, he said, his voice soft. Emily turned to him, her eyes filled with emotion. I couldn't have done it without you. Ethan stepped closer, his hand brushing against her cheek. Yes, you could have, but you didn't. Half the tears slipped down Emily's cheeks as she leaned into his touch. I don't know what I'd do without you, Ethan. You'll never have to find out, he murmured, his voice filled with quiet conviction. He kissed her, then slow and deep, the world around them fading into nothing when they pull apart. Emily rested her forehead against his, her heart full. I love you, she whispered, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Ethan smiled, his eyes shining with emotion. I love you too. For the first time, Emily felt like she had found a home, not in a place, but in a person. The television in Eleanor's elegant sitting room played the live broadcast of Ethan and Emily's press conference, the carefully curated narrative, Emily's heartfelt words, and Ethan's commanding defense left her speechless. For the first time in years, her plan to dismantle their union had not only failed, but had inadvertently fortified it. She poured herself another glass of wine, her grip tightening around the crystal stem. He's more stubborn than I gave him credit for, she murmured, her voice carrying both frustration and an edge of reluctant admiration. Her assistant stepped into the room hesitantly. Mrs. Sullivan, your scheduled interview. Should we cancel? Eleanor waved her off. No, let and see what they do next. This isn't over. But as the assistant left, Eleanor's confident facade cracked. The image of her son standing by Emily, declaring his love with unshakable certainty, stayed with her for the first time. She wondered if she was on the wrong side of this fight. Ethan awoke to find Emily already out of bed. He followed the faint sound of the television to the living room, where she sat curled up on the couch, her eyes glued to the morning news. The press was buzzing with their story, the headlines surprisingly favorable. Ethan Sullivan and wife take a stand against critics. Emily Sullivan's poise and honesty win public over. Ethan sat beside her, placing a hand on her knee. You did it, he said softly. Emily turned to him, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. We did it, but this isn't the end, is it? Ethan shook his head. No, my mother doesn't give up easily, but she's running out of moves. Emily sighed, leaning into him. I just want this to be over, Ethan. I want us to live without constantly looking over our shoulders. Ethan kissed the top of her head. We'll get there, I promise. Eleanor had invited Ethan and Emily to dinner at her estate. The handwritten note was formal, but carried an unspoken weight. Emily hesitated as she read it, her stomach nodding. What do you think this means? She asked Ethan. It means she's up to something, he replied, his jaw tightening. But if we don't go, she'll use it against us. Emily took a deep breath, nodding. Then we face her together. The dining room was an elaborate display of wealth and power, but the atmosphere was cold. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, her posture regal and her smile razor-sharp. Ethan and Emily were seated across from her, the tension between them palpable. I must admit, Eleanor began, her tone deceptively sweet, your performance at the press conference was impressive. It wasn't a performance, Ethan replied, his voice steady. It was the truth. Eleanor's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. Of course, and the truth is so malleable, don't you think? Emily met her gaze, her voice calm but firm. Not for us. Eleanor studied her for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. You're quite the enigma, Emily. I underestimated you. You're not the first, Emily replied, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Ethan's hand found hers under the table, a silent gesture of support. Eleanor noticed, but said nothing, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. Eleanor led them into her study, the warm glow of the fireplace contrasting with the chill in the air. She gestured for them to sit, but neither Ethan nor Emily moved. I'll make this simple, Eleanor said, folding her hands neatly on her desk. I've seen enough to know you're serious about this relationship, but there's one thing you should consider. Emily tilted her head, her expression calm. And what's that? You're a liability, Eleanor said bluntly. You come from nothing. Your past is a stain on the Sullivan name, and no matter how well you play this role, you'll never truly belong. Ethan stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. That's enough. Eleanor looked at him, her expression cool. I'm protecting you, Ethan, from a mistake you'll regret. Ethan's jaw tightened, but it was Emily who spoke next. You're wrong. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, surprised by Emily's calm defiance. I may not come from your world, Emily continued, her voice steady, but that doesn't make me less worthy. I love Ethan, not for his name or his money, but for the man he is, and I'm not going anywhere. The room fell silent, the weight of Emily's words hanging in the air. Eleanor's expression remained unreadable, but something in her eyes shifted. Ethan stepped beside Emily, his arm wrapping around her protectively. If you can't accept Emily, then you don't accept me. And if that's the case, then we're done. Eleanor's composure cracked, her eyes widening. For the first time, she saw the depth of her son's resolve and the strength of the woman he had chosen. Very well, Eleanor said finally, her voice quieter than before. If this is what you want, Ethan, then I won't stand in your way, Ethan. And Emily exchanged a glance, both surprised and relieved. But as they left the estate that night, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. They sat on the balcony, the city lights stretching out before them. Ethan held Emily close, his voice soft. She won't bother us again, he said, though there was an edge of uncertainty in his tone. Emily nodded, resting her head against his shoulder. Even if she does, we'll face it together. Ethan kissed her temple, his heart full. Always, for the first time in weeks, they felt a sense of peace, a moment of calm in the storm. Whatever came next, they knew they had each other. And that was enough. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the tall windows as Emily woke to the smell of a fresh coffee. Ethan stood in the kitchen flipping through the morning papers, his brow furrowed. Emily approached quietly, her bare feet soft against the cool marble floor. What's the verdict today? She asked, leaning against the counter. Ethan's expression softened as he looked at her, positive. Mostly. The press conference worked in our favor. Even the tabloids are starting to move on. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. That's a relief. Ethan reached for her hand, pulling her closer. We've weathered the worst of it. Now it's time to focus on us. Emily smiled, resting her forehead against his. That sounds perfect. A sleek envelope embossed with gold lettering was delivered to the penthouse. Emily opened it hesitantly, reading aloud, "The Sullivan Family Gala, a night to remember. Attendance requested." Ethan groaned, rubbing his temples. Of course, my mother's idea of an olive branch. Emily frowned. Do you think she's sincere? Ethan's jaw tightened. Sincere isn't in her vocabulary. This is about saving face. Emily hesitated. Do we have to go? Ethan looked at her, his expression softening. We don't have to do anything. But if we don't, it'll only give her more ammunition. Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. Then we'll go together. The Sullivan estate was transformed into a glittering wonderland, with chandeliers casting a golden glow over the grand ballroom. The city's elite mingled, their laughter and conversation filling the air. But all eyes turned when Ethan and Emily entered. Emily wore a stunning sapphire gown that hugged her figure, her hair swept into an elegant updo. Ethan, in a classic black tuxedo, was the epitome of sophistication. Together they were a picture of perfection, a united front. Eleanor greeted them at the entrance, her smile as polished as her diamond necklace. Ethan, Emily, you look lovely tonight. Thank you, Emily replied politely, though her guard remained up. Eleanor's gaze lingered on her for a moment before she turned to Ethan. I trust you'll make the rounds. The board members are eager to see you. Ethan's expression remained neutral. Of course. As they moved through the crowd, Emily felt the weight of the room's scrutiny. But Ethan never left her side, his hand resting lightly on her back. His presence was both protective and reassuring. Eleanor approached the microphone at the front of the room, drawing everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. This gala is a celebration of the Sullivan legacy, a legacy built on resilience, unity, and love. Her eyes flicked briefly to Ethan and Emily, her tone carrying a subtle edge. And tonight we honor those who carry that legacy forward. The room erupted into applause, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor's words were a veiled challenge. Ethan squeezed her hand, his gaze steady. Ignore her, she's just posturing. Emily nodded, but the tension in her chest didn't ease. Emily stepped out onto the terrace for a moment of quiet, the cool night air a welcome relief from the crowded ballroom. She wasn't alone for long. I must say you've surprised me, Eleanor said, stepping into view. Her tone was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. Emily straightened, her posture calm. I'm glad I could exceed your expectations. Eleanor smirked. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Ethan seems happier. Emily's heart skipped at the unexpected admission. He is, and so am I. Eleanor studied her for a moment, then sighed. You've proven your loyalty, Emily. I still don't trust easily, but perhaps I've underestimated you. Emily blinked, caught off guard. What are you saying? I am saying, Eleanor replied, her tone softer than before, that I might have been wrong, but don't expect me to admit it twice. Emily couldn't help but smile faintly. Noted you disappeared, he said, his tone teasing, but tinged with concern. I needed air, Emily replied, her voice light. Your mother found me. Ethan's brow furrowed. What did she say? Emily smiled softly. Something I didn't expect. I think she's finally starting to accept us. Ethan exhaled, relief washing over his features. That's a miracle, Emily laughed, the sound light and genuine. I told you we'd get through this. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. You were right, and I'll never forget how strong you've been through all of this. Emily looked up at him, her heart full. I couldn't have done it without you. Ethan leaned down, kissing her softly. I love you, Emily. I love you too, she whispered, her voice steady and Sure. Emily and Ethan stood on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below them. The storm that had once surrounded them had finally begun to clear, leaving a sense of peace in its wake. What now? Emily asked, her voice quiet. Ethan smiled, pulling her close. Now we live. No more contracts, no more arrangements, just us. Emily rested her head on his shoulder, a smile spreading across her lips. That sounds perfect. For the first time in what felt like forever, the future felt bright. Together they had faced the impossible and come out stronger. And now they were ready to build a life filled with love, trust, and endless possibilities. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows as Emily stood on the balcony, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. The air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of the bustling city below. Ethan joined her, his arm slipping around her waist as he pressed a kiss to her temple. You've been quiet this morning, he said softly. Emily smiled, leaning into his warmth. Just thinking about how far we've come. Ethan glanced at her, his eyes full of emotion. It's been a journey, hasn't it? She nodded, her gaze drifting to the horizon. I never thought I'd find myself here with you. Everything felt so impossible at the beginning. Ethan turned her gently to face him, his hands resting on her shoulders. We made it through because of you, Emily. Your strength, your heart, you're the reason I've changed. Emily's chest tightened, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. And you're the reason I believed I could. Ethan was in his office when his phone buzzed. Seeing Eleanor's name on the screen, he hesitated before answering. Mother, he said, his tone guarded. Ethan. Eleanor began, her voice unusually subdued. I wanted to apologize. Ethan blinked, surprise. Apologize? Yes, Eleanor admitted, her tone softening. For everything I've realized that I was wrong to interfere, wrong to try to control your life. Emily is remarkable. You made the right choice. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened, his heart swelling with a mix of relief and disbelief. Thank you. That means more than you know. Eleanor paused before continuing. There's a board meeting next week. I'd like Emily to attend with you. It's time she saw what it means to be part of this family. Ethan smiled faintly. We'll be there. As they sat on the couch, Ethan told Emily about the call with his mother. Her eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. She said that she really apologized. Ethan nodded, a soft smile tugging at his lips. She did. And she wants you at the board meeting next week. Emily hesitated, a mix of excitement and nerves coursing through her. That's a big step. Ethan took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. You're ready for it, Emily, and I'll be right there with you. She smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. I'm in. Let's do this. Emily dressed in a sleek black dress, her confidence bolstered by Ethan's unwavering support. As they entered the boardroom, she felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a declaration that she was truly part of Ethan's world. Eleanor greeted them with a warm smile, her demeanor noticeably softer. Emily, you look lovely. Thank you, Emily replied, her voice steady. I'm honored to be here. As the meeting began, Emily listened intently, absorbing every detail. She saw firsthand the respect Ethan commanded and the weight of his responsibilities, but more importantly, she saw how he carried himself with integrity and heart. After the meeting, Eleanor approached Emily privately. You handled yourself well today. Thank you, Emily said, her voice calm but warm. I'm learning from the best. Eleanor's lips twitched into a faint smile. I underestimated you, Emily, but I'm glad Ethan didn't. The words carried a weight that Emily didn't take lightly. She nodded, her gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you, Eleanor. He led her to the rooftop of their building where twinkling fairy lights and a candlelit table awaited them. The city skyline stretched out around them, a breathtaking backdrop for the intimate setting. What's all this? Emily asked, her voice filled with awe. Ethan smiled, pulling her close. I wanted to celebrate us, everything we've been through, everything we've overcome, and everything we're building together. Emily's heart raced as Ethan dropped to one knee, a small velvet box in his hand. Tears welled in her eyes as he opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. Emily Harper Sullivan, he began, his voice filled with emotion. You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've shown me what love really means, and I don't want to spend another day without you by my side. Will you marry me again, for real this time? Emily laughed through her tears, her heart bursting with happiness. Yes, Ethan, 1,000 times yes. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger before pulling her into a deep, passionate kiss. The city lights seemed to glow brighter, as if celebrating their love. The Sullivan estate was alive with joy as family and friends gathered for Ethan and Emily's vow renewal. The ceremony was intimate and heartfelt, a celebration of the love that had overcome every obstacle. Eleanor stood beside them, her once icy demeanor thawed into genuine warmth. You've proven me wrong, Emily, she admitted quietly, and I've never been happier to be wrong. Emily smiled, her eyes shining. Thank you, Eleanor. That means everything. As Ethan and Emily exchanged vows, the world seemed to fade away. They had found in each other a love that was unshakable, a bond that could weather any storm. Together, they had created a life filled with trust, respect, and endless possibilities. As they kissed to seal their vows, the crowd erupted into cheers, and as they looked into each other's eyes, they knew that this was only the beginning of their forever. Nestled in the rolling hills of Napa Valley, the Sullivan family vineyard was the perfect setting for Ethan and Emily's one-year anniversary celebration. The estate had been transformed into a romantic paradise with strings of lights twinkling above long tables adorned with white roses and flickering candles. It was a private event attended by close family and friends. Ethan stood near the edge of the vineyard, his sharp suit tailored perfectly, a glass of champagne in hand. He watched Emily from a distance, her laughter floating through the air as she chatted with Eleanor. Her soft blush-colored dress moved gently in the breeze, and Ethan's chest swelled with pride. "She's extraordinary," a voice said beside him. It was Liam, his ever-loyal friend and attorney. Ethan smiled, his gaze never leaving Emily. "She is every day. I wonder how I got so lucky." "You've changed, Ethan," Liam said with a teasing grin. "The old you wouldn't have even noticed." Ethan chuckled. "The old me was an idiot." Liam raised his glass to new beginnings. "To Emily," Ethan corrected, clinking his glass. Standing before the crowd, his arm wrapped around Emily's waist, Ethan raised his glass. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate with us. This past year has been one of the most incredible of my life. And it's because of this woman right here." Emily blushed, her eyes sparkling as she looked up at him. "Emily," Ethan continued, his voice thick with emotion, "you've taught me what love really means. You've shown me what it is to live fully, to be vulnerable, and to let someone in. You are my heart, my home, and my everything." The crowd erupted into applause as Ethan leaned down, pressing a tender kiss to Emily's lips. She smiled against his mouth, her tears of joy glistening in the fading sunlight. Ethan and Emily walked hand in hand through the vineyard, the soft glow of the lanterns lighting their path. The quiet hum of crickets filled the air as they paused beneath a sprawling oak tree. "Do you ever think about where we started?" Emily asked, her voice soft. Ian smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "All the time. If someone had told me back then that the woman I hired to play my wife would end up being the love of my life, I wouldn't have believed them." Emily laughed, resting her head against his chest. "And if someone had told me I'd fall in love with the most arrogant man I'd ever met, I would have run the other way." Ethan tilted her chin up, his expression tender. "I'm glad you didn't." They stood in silence for a moment, the world around them fading as they focused only on each other. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "Another one?" Emily teased, her eyes wide. "This one's different," Ethan said, opening the box to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a single diamond pendant. "It's not just jewelry, it's a reminder. No matter where life takes us, you'll always have my heart." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she let him fasten the necklace around her neck. "I don't need a reminder, Ethan. I already know." He kissed her deeply, the vineyard fading into the background as they lost themselves in each other. The Sullivan estate was alive with laughter and joy as children played on the lawn and guests mingled on the patio. Ethan and Emily stood together, watching their 3-year-old daughter Lily chase after her older brother James, who had just turned 5. "They're exhausting," Emily said with a laugh, leaning into Ethan. "But worth every second," Ethan replied, his arm draped over her shoulders. "Just like you." Eleanor approached her, once intimidating presence now softened by the years. She smiled warmly at her grandchildren before turning to Emily. "You've built a beautiful family, my dear. I couldn't be prouder." Emily's heart swelled. "Thank you, Eleanor. That means everything." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the estate, Ethan pulled Emily aside. They stood at the edge of the property, the same place where he had first told her he loved her. 5 years, 2 kids, and a lifetime to go, Ethan said, his voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't have dreamed of a better partner." Emily smiled, her eyes shimmering with love. "Neither could I." As they kissed, their children's laughter ringing in the distance, Ethan and Emily knew they had built something truly extraordinary. Their love, forged through trials and triumphs, was unshakable, a testament to the power of trust, forgiveness, unwavering devotion. And in that moment, surrounded by the life they had created together, they knew their story was only just beginning. We loved having you here. Share in the comments what you thought of the story and how we can make it even better next time.